What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Welcome into 104.3 The Fans halftime chill as the Broncos are in London taking on the Jaguars, currently losing 10-3. Will Peterson, Rachel Veal hanging out with you as we break down the first half. And there's a sliver of hope, Will, and a lot of darkness surrounding this team. What was your main takeaway?
They're lucky they're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, honestly, Jacksonville throws a pick on the 1 yard line with Trevor Lawrence. It was a phenomenal play by Justin Simmons, but they're really lucky they're playing Jacksonville. Jacksonville gets into field goal range near the end of the half, and Lawrence gets the intentional grounding, so they have to punt it back to the Broncos. The Broncos then get in field goal range, and Russell Wilson takes a sack that you just can't take. So, yeah, 10-7, but Rachel, the penalties are obviously a massive story. The Broncos had one nice drive, and it's kind of crazy that one nice drive feels like a treat at this point. It's like, oh, they moved the ball down the field. Jerry Jeudy made a couple of plays, a touchdown. But outside of that drive, they've looked bad. Jacksonville should have at least 17, if not 20 points. Broncos are really lucky they're only at 10. So, yeah, they're in it, but feels like different continents, same incompetence.
And this defense can't be doing this forever as we welcome in our very own Zach By from the Stokely and Zach Show. Good morning, Zach. How are you?
I'd be doing a little bit better if first downs and touchdowns didn't feel like a lunar eclipse. I mean, the offense continues to just be dreck. I mean, outside of that one drive that I think I just heard Will referencing, it almost felt weird. And this is kind of where we're at. Like, the Broncos went down and had a mostly competent drive that finished with a nice design on a touchdown, and they made the extra point. And it was like, this is strange. This feels unfamiliar. And of course, as I'm about to tweet out the congratulations, the Broncos get a delay of game on the kickoff. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The Broncos are a mostly awful operation. Like, there are other bad football teams in the league right now, and the Broncos have been that for years. But offensively, they're a really bad operation. And to have more penalties than you have points at halftime is embarrassing, Rach.
Oh, my gosh, it really is. 71 penalty yards. Just a very disorganized football team. And, yeah, with that touchdown, I was speechless. I didn't know what to say because I don't even remember the feeling for what it's like to actually have a touchdown from this team. When you look at Russell Wilson, Zach, a lot of people have been saying, oh, shouldn't be playing today if he's hurt. They said that they were icing his shoulder / his back. What's your take? Should they keep him in, or should they, toss him to the curb and let it rip?
Well, I understand the thought of, hey, you got the bye week coming up. I think I heard Mike Evans say if they just rested him this week, he would have 26 days off before the next football game. That's a big chunk as you're going to find in the NFL. But at the same time, your season's on the line. And it's hanging by a thread. You could actually argue, because you lost on Thursday Night Football to the Colts and then lost at home to the Jets last week, that your season's already over. But if it's not, it comes down to this football game. So it's really like, what's the downside? If something happens with Russ, okay, your playoff probability goes from 8% where it's at now to 4? I mean, it's like the season's kind of already lost anyway. So let's just roll the dice with this guy you paid $250 million to and see what he can do on a bad wheel. So far, a couple really awful decisions, awful. And this is why you got to be watching the game. And Will, this, Rach, you too. Like, if you hover over the stats right now and just look at the stats, he's 12 for 19, pretty good completion percentage with 117 yards. A touchdown, does have the one turnover. But Russell should have 3 interceptions to his name right now. 3. That's just the facts. So, and then even the touchdown that he threw and the box score says touchdown, he's just letting it go to Jeudy on a nice design. So, yeah, he gets credit for that. But, some discernment and talking it through, it's not just about the stats. So, Russell just doesn't look good to me. Like, he hasn't looked good all season, bad wheel or not, the hamstring or not. So, Rachel, you referenced the unfamiliar territory of the touchdown. The question is, can they score a second touchdown? Because in 6 of the 7 games so far, they have scored 0 or 1 touchdown. Only 1 game had they scored multiple touchdowns.
I know. It's so sad. We'll go for it.
Well, I was just going to add to Zach's point. Okay, so his first throw of the game should have been intercepted, right? Jaguars player absolutely drops it. His second throw of the game is intercepted. And then the third pick Zach's talking about is right before half. The ball goes through the Jaguars receiver's hands. And then, guys, on fourth down, I know we were scrambling to get on the show. They didn't even throw a Hail Mary. They just threw the ball out of bounds to get to the half. And, it was 4th down, so he had to run out the 3 seconds to make sure Jacksonville didn't get the ball back. But we're not even throwing a Hail Mary. Are we worried about Russ's stats? That one was a little odd to me for a team that can't.
Yes. Yes, I think that's a really good point. What is the downside? Truly, let's ask ourselves the question. What's the downside of throwing a Hail Mary in that moment? Because you're already out of field goal range because Russ has an awful line in front of him, took a bad sack. But what's the downside of throwing a Hail Mary? Every NFL team throws a Hail Mary right there. Are they worried about Russell's stats? And because an interception is more likely than a touchdown in that moment, something to consider. It's a good point, Will.
No, it's a great point. We've had the conversation a lot about how Russ, although he's nowhere near the conversation, wants those MVP-like numbers because he's never won an MVP. So if you're looking just strictly at stats, which is funny that you kind of say it because, Zach, yeah, that play doesn't make sense why you don't go for the Hail Mary. But you also say if you look at the stats, it actually looks like he's having a fine game compared to actually watching the game. So it's just an interesting byline. We'll also keep everybody updated on center Cushenberry because this offensive line continues to struggle, but they just continue to keep seeing injuries too, Will.
Yeah, I mean, if Graham Glasgow has to play center the rest of the game, they're in trouble because the second Glasgow got in there. I know Russ should have hit Dulcich, and it was a bad sack, and I said that at the start, and Zach just said it. But still, I mean, he got blown up right up the middle, and I don't trust Graham Glasgow. It's a mouthful to say in this stage of his career, so they better hope Cushenberry's okay, that's for sure. But even when they're healthy, guys, who on this line do we trust? Maybe just Cushenberry, right? Like, we heard Dalton Reisner's name is coming up in trade rumors. He's going to be a free agent next week. I'm not trying to pick on Dalton Reisner, but his value is inflated because he's a nice guy and he's a Colorado kid, right? If he wasn't those two things, he would not be as special to Broncos fans as he is. Bullsy's obviously done for the year. The Belly, I don't know. He's got a cute, fun nickname, but is he a great NFL player? I'm not sure. And then you're down to guys like Calvin Anderson after that and Cam Fleming and the ghost of Billy Turner. Like, it's just not a good offensive line. If you listen closely to Andrew Mason, he says George Paton's number one priority in the draft has to be O-lineman. Well, guess what? They don't have draft picks until Adam Schefter comes out this morning and says a team's willing to give up a first-round pick for Bradley Chubb. If you can do that and get an O-lineman, win or lose today, is something you have to seriously consider.
Zach, how confident are you that that statement's actually true for just Bradley Chubb?
You know what? I'm not doubting Schefter's reporting, but I was impressed by the fact that he, fielded that type of return. I'll wait to see it though. I'll wait to see it. I mean, up until this point, I did not believe you're getting a number one for Bradley Chubb because look at his career. Bradley's playing great right now. We haven't seen this version of Bradley since 2018 or
18, it's rookie year, really. I feel like, maybe
his rookie year where he goes for 12 sacks. It hadn't even looked like even close to that in years, guys, in years. And now we're seeing it. It's almost like the classic pro athlete tale. Like in a contract year, here's this guy balling out. I mean, okay. If you can get a first round pick for him, look, you run to the phone and you get it done. I wouldn't even let him play in the game today if you could get him a first round pick because the Broncos aren't going anywhere fast this year. And you're not going to sign Bradley Chubb to some long-term lucrative deal. I've advocated for really considering the franchise tag, which is sort of like, okay, let's, prove it again, Bradley. If you think the Broncos are going to be better next year and you're not quite ready to hand things over to Baron Browning and rely on Randy Gregory full time, maybe you franchise tag him and make him play for, that 1 year, what is it, 18 million or whatever it would be. It's to the point where it's been so diminished for years that like if you could get a first round freaking pick for Chubb, I think you sprint to the phone.
Yeah, which makes we talked about this with Mace and Cecil on the pregame show. It makes it almost hard to believe that there has to be something else added in with Bradley Chubb to warrant a first round pick. That was a main conversation this morning for both of you. And this is everybody talking about it in the comments. How likely is it that Nathaniel Hackett gets the Hackett tomorrow morning, Zach?
Well, I think it should be very likely. There's an old phrase, if you're going to do something eventually, do it immediately. Nathaniel Hackett will not be back as the head coach of the Broncos next year. That's not going to happen. I believe that the Broncos would have to make the playoffs because you're not just overcoming wins and losses, you're overcoming embarrassments. You're overcoming national television, your name dragged through the mud type embarrassments. So I think they'd have to make the playoffs, and there's nothing, and I mean nothing, about this football team that says playoffs. So get rid of Nathaniel Hackett, see what you have maybe in Ejiro Evero. Even then, I just think that it's less about seeing what you have in Evero and more of drawing a line of what's acceptable and what's not as a new standard for new ownership. Hackett's not going to be back, guys. He's just not. But if he is fired, this is a little fun fact. If he is fired, Nathaniel Hackett would have coached the least amount of regular season games in NFL history for an in-season fire. Getting fired after one season, it's uncommon, but it happens. Steve Wilkes, Chip Kelly, Hugh Jackson, they've all been fired after one season. But you got to start thinking like Urban Meyer territory. But even Bourbon Urban got 13 games. You can't find another example, and I did the research. I'll save everyone the time. You can't find another example in NFL history where a coach was coaching in the regular season for the least little amount of games as Nathaniel Hackett would have coached if he is fired. George Allen was fired in the preseason. Bill Parcells never coached a game for the Jets. The least amount of games would be Nathaniel Hackett if he is let go in London.
Well, and Urban Meyer also went to a bar and was doing something wildly inappropriate that went viral on video, and he still got 13 games. We're talking about Hackett getting 8 when we don't have any character concerns. We're just concerned he's a really bad football coach. That's what makes it even that much more unprecedented. Listen, Rachel, if they win, they're not going to fire him. I guarantee you that, even with the bye week and it being the time, I'm on Zach's side that he's one and done with the Broncos, but if the Broncos win today, you can't fire the head coach tomorrow. It's just not going to happen. So I hate to say it, but if you're a Broncos fan in the comments asking, will he get fired? I don't know where your rooting allegiance is in the second half. I'm always going to root for the Broncos. I can't root against them. It's not in my DNA. But I guarantee, guys, there are Broncos fans this morning who woke up early, who are salty, who have their Bloody Mary and bacon and eggs, who are hoping that if it means Hackett's gone tomorrow, that the Broncos screw up this second half and lose this football game.
It used to be for draft picks. Sorry, Rachel. It used to be for draft picks. It was like, hey, you want to know what? This team stinks, and I just want them to lose because they get a better draft pick. Now you don't have your draft picks. So, I mean, if you're looking for rooting interest and you're hate watching the Broncos, it's for Nathaniel Hackett to get the axe.
Yeah, very true. It goes back to, though, just being poorly coached. The Broncos officially set a club record for most penalties in the first 8 games of a season. Previous record was 67. The 2022 Broncos have 68, you guys. That is just unreal when you really think about it. But again, it just goes back to being poorly coached. And Zach, you said it. He will not be the head coach of this football team. So why not just take the axe to it early and see what you have with Evero?
And it's not even necessarily like, hey, maybe Evero's our next coach, because I don't think you want to hire another first-time head coach. You did it with Vance. You did it with Vic. You did it with Nathaniel. I think the next football coach has to have some level of merit, real pelts on the wall that other guys can follow, and not like learn who they are on the fly and get pitched on who they're going to be. They need more of an identity because right now they have none.
He's coaching for his job in the second half, and I think it started, so I'm fixing to go find out.
All right, everybody, enjoy the second half. We'll be back post-game live as soon as the clock hits 0, hopefully with the Broncos win. We'll see everybody then.